And it is mulberry season here in south central Missouri. Our neighbors have a mature mulberry tree, and a lot of the fruit is falling on the ground. It's kind of difficult to gather it just by hand picking. I know some people will have like a whole tarp setup where they put like a sheet or tarp underneath the branches and shake the branches. So besides eating a lot of mulberries this week, I was hoping to put up a batch of jam into our pantry for the winter. It won't be a huge batch of jam, but it'll be a start. And I've also been freezing our mulberries. But it is nice to have some shelf-stable jam that you can just pull out of the pantry at a moment's notice. So that's what I'm going to work on today. So I've started by washing my jars and filling them with hot water. You want your jars to be heated before you go hot packing them. You can also stick them in a steaming water bath canner so that they're super hot. But I find that washing them and filling them with hot water usually works fine for me. So I'm going to rinse my mulberries. These are some mulberries that I picked last night. I also picked some mulberries earlier this week that I put in the freezer. But I'll be popping those ones out of the freezer to use today in the jam. Now, it was fairly difficult to find a low sugar mulberry jam recipe online, but from the research that I've done, it is safe to can mulberries, or considered safe at least. And most recipes do call for some sort of lemon juice though, or acidic juice. So I'm going to be using the recipe on my low sugar pectin. There's not a category for mulberries on here, but I'm going to be following along with basically the blueberry jam recipe, which calls for some lemon juice. Now, most of the time you want to stick fairly close to the sugar amounts called for on your pectin insert. This real fruit, low or no sugar pectin allows you to make jam with a very minimal amount of sweetener. So we have our 3.5 cups of prepared mulberries, 2/3 of a cup of water. You can also use fruit juice. I'm also going to add 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. Now, generally speaking, when you're water bath canning fruit jams, most fruits have enough acidity to where you don't need to add any sort of lemon juice or anything else to make it more acidic. But from my research with mulberries, it looks like they're a lower acidic fruit, and so it is recommended that you use some lemon juice with your mulberry jam. I've measured out 3 tablespoons of my low or no sugar needed pectin. I'm going to add that to my berries and mix it in. Mulberries are so good. They're a little bit on the sweet side as far as berries go. They're definitely sweeter than like a blackberry or a raspberry, but they're really good. Now, just as a quick disclaimer, since we are doing water bath canning, I just wanted to let y'all know that there are certain guidelines that you want to follow. You want to make sure that your jars seal all the way. You don't want to use food that's been sitting in the cupboard where the seal has been compromised. You also want to be careful if you're going to water bath can something that what you're canning has a high enough acidity, because low acidity foods are at risk for getting botulism. So just like, for example, you wouldn't want to try to water bath can chicken or sweet corn. You do want to follow just some common sense and the standard guidelines for how long to process your jars, etc., etc. Anyway, just be responsible, do your own research. And I opted to use my immersion blender to help blend up my berries. You don't have to use an immersion blender. A lot of people use a potato masher, but that's just personally what I opted to do. And it looks like I'm going for the evening finish on my kitchen now that I've made a huge mess. So our jam has reached a full boil that cannot be stirred down. And I still have some chunks of fruit in there, which we like, but it is somewhat blended together. So I'm going to go ahead and turn my jam off. And then I'm going to add my sweetener. Our recipe calls for, well, depending on how sweet you want to make it, anywhere from no sweetener to up to a full cup of sweetener for our jam. Now, we don't like things extremely sweet, so I'm going to go ahead and add a 1/4 cup of honey to our mulberry jam. Plus, mulberries are already somewhat sweet, so it's not like we're starting with blueberries. We're a less sweet berry. You can also use sugar for this recipe. I've heard of people even using stevia. I haven't researched using stevia in your canned goods, but that might be something to check out if you are big into using stevia as a sweetener. I just am happy that there's an option for making jam that does not involve using tons and tons of sugar. My early jam recipes, it seemed, involved using more sugar than fruit, and that just seemed like it wasn't going to be sustainable for our health over the long term. But thankfully there's some low sugar pectin options out there. Now that we have added our sweetener, I'm going to return our jam mixture to heat the heat, and I'm going to mix it. We want to return it to a full rolling boil and boil it hard for 1 minute. You'll also want to get your lids ready. I'm going to boil mine on this back burner. I think they've come up with some new guidelines where you don't have to boil your lids anymore to sanitize them, but I have had mixed results with getting my lids to seal well if I don't boil them first, so I feel like it's probably just a good policy to boil them. Now the boiling time is up, so I removed my jam from the heat. And now we can start packing our jam into jars. You first want to make sure that your jars don't have any chips around the glass, around the rim, as that could help to prevent a good seal. And you want to be careful to not overfill your jars. I'm going to leave at least a 1/2 inch of head space, so that's about good. Now the recipe on the insert called for 8-ounce or 1/2 pint size jars. Now I only got about 3 8-ounce jars of jam, but I think it's important to remember that with 3.5 cups of fruit, it would be fairly easy to scale this recipe up if you so desired to do a bigger batch at a time. To wipe your rims off, make sure that there's nothing that would impede your jar from sealing. Using a clean cloth, of course. Apply your lids, your hot lids, to your jars. Center them on your rim so that way they're not too far off to one side. And add your ring and tighten it so it's finger tight. You don't want it to be extremely tight, but you also don't want it to be too loose, as it may loosen more during the canning process. And the recipe says to process your 8-ounce jars at boiling for 15 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and add them to my water bath canner. You want to, I like to add my jars to my water bath canner before my water is completely hot. I think it reduces jar breakage, but you definitely want it to be warm. So I like to shoot for about a similar temperature of water to what the jam is in the jars. And you want your jars to be covered by water at least 1 to 2 inches. And I've processed my jars of jam in water bath canner at a full boil for at least 15 minutes. And they're now ready to be taken out of the canner. Look at that. So I will take them out of the canner, let them sit here for, well, it won't be quite a full 24 hours, but it'll be overnight. And then tomorrow I will, assuming that they all seal, I will take the rings off, just double check the seal, make sure they have a good seal, and label them. And then I will put them away in my pantry. And this jar did not seal, so we get to put it in the fridge and eat it a lot sooner. And this should help to give you an idea of what the texture is like. It's delicious. It tastes like mulberries with a hint of honey. So this is one way that you can preserve your mulberries if you have an abundance, so you can enjoy them come winter.